The quantum physics of spiritual awakening. Schrödinger versus shamanism. Quantum physics explains spiritual awakening better than any religion. When Schrödinger developed his famous equation in 1925, he unwittingly created the mathematical foundation for what shamans have known for thousands of years. Here's the mind-blowing part. Both quantum physics and spiritual awakening recognize that consciousness creates reality. It's not just philosophical. It's scientifically proven through quantum superposition, where particles exist in multiple states until observed. Every spiritual tradition talks about oneness, but quantum entanglement literally proves it. Two particles can instantly affect each other regardless of distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Sound familiar to telepathy or prayer? The observer effect in physics shows that particles behave differently when watched. This perfectly mirrors the spiritual concept that our attention shapes our reality. Ancient practices like meditation are essentially controlling where we place our quantum observation. Shamans enter altered states to access hidden information. Quantum physics explains this through quantum tunneling, where particles pass through seemingly impenetrable barriers, accessing information that shouldn't be available. The multiverse theory suggests infinite parallel realities exist simultaneously, exactly what mystics have described as different planes of existence throughout history. What's fascinating is how both quantum physicists and spiritual masters arrive at the same conclusion through completely different methods. One uses mathematics, the other uses consciousness exploration, yet they describe the same underlying reality. Spiritual awakening isn't abandoning science. It's embracing its deepest implications about the nature of consciousness and reality. Have you ever experienced a moment where the world just shifted? Maybe during a deep meditation, a moment in nature, a challenging life event, or even through practices like breathwork or plant medicines. That feeling of the veil lifting, where your sense of self expands, the boundaries between you and everything else seem to soften, and you perceive reality with a startling new clarity or interconnectedness. People call this many things: spiritual awakening, mystical experience, non-ordinary consciousness. It's profound, often ineffable, and it seems to operate by rules very different from our normal, day-to-day experience. For a long time, science and spirituality have been seen as fundamentally separate. Science dealt with the objective, measurable, material world. Spirituality dealt with the subjective, the inner, the transcendent, often involving beliefs and experiences that seemed beyond physical explanation. Classical physics, with its predictable billiard ball universe, certainly didn't offer much common ground for exploring states of oneness or non-local awareness. But then came quantum physics, the science of the very, very small, and it revealed a universe that is far stranger, more interconnected, and more dynamic than classical physics ever imagined. At the quantum level, reality isn't fixed and predictable. It's fuzzy, probabilistic, and deeply influenced by observation. Particles can be in multiple places at once, superposition, instantaneously linked regardless of distance, entanglement, and can pop through barriers, tunneling. It's a world that, on the surface, seems to share some curious parallels with the non-ordinary realities described in spiritual traditions like shamanism. Think about Schrödinger's cat. This famous thought experiment, devised by physicist Erwin Schrödinger, highlights the bizarre nature of superposition. Imagine a cat in a sealed box with a radioactive atom, a Geiger counter, a hammer, and a vial of poison. If the atom decays, the Geiger counter detects it, the hammer breaks the vial, and the cat dies. According to quantum physics, until the box is opened and the atom is observed, the atom is in a superposition of both decayed and undecayed states. Therefore, the cat, linked to the atom state, is considered to be simultaneously both alive and dead. It's only when you open the box and observe that the quantum state collapses into a single reality. Either the cat is alive or it's dead. This is radically different from our everyday experience, where a cat is either alive or dead, regardless of whether you're looking at it. Now, contrast this with the perspective often encountered in spiritual awakening or shamanic journeys. In these states, the seemingly fixed reality of our everyday lives can appear fluid and open to multiple possibilities. The solid boundaries of self, time, and space can dissolve. A shaman, entering a trance state, might perceive multiple layers of reality, interact with spirit helpers, or journey to distant realms, experiences that defy the single, fixed reality of classical physics. Could the subjective experience of expanded awareness involve a temporary shift in how our consciousness interacts with the potentiality of reality? perhaps echoing the concepts of superposition or the collapse of the wave function. It's a speculative leap, but the metaphor is intriguing. Another core concept in quantum physics is entanglement. When two particles become entangled, they are linked in such a way that the state of one particle is instantaneously correlated with the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. Measure the spin of one entangled electron, and you instantly know the spin of its partner. This connection defies classical intuition, which says that influence diminishes with distance. It suggests a fundamental interconnectedness at the heart of the universe. This resonates powerfully with a common experience during spiritual awakening: the profound, often overwhelming sense of oneness with all things. The feeling that you are not just a separate individual, but intimately connected to every person, every living being, the earth, and the cosmos itself. This isn't just an intellectual idea, it's a visceral, felt sense of unity. Could this subjective experience of interconnectedness be related in some way to the fundamental entanglement that quantum physics tells us underlies reality? Is it possible that in altered states of consciousness, our perception shifts to become more aligned with the non-local, interconnected nature of the quantum world? Again, this is more an analogy than a direct scientific link, but it provides a framework to consider such experiences not just as hallucinations, but as potentially valid perceptions of a deeper reality. The observer effect is another quantum puzzle. As seen with Schrödinger's cat, the act of measurement or observation seems to play a crucial role in determining the outcome of a quantum event. Reality, at this level, doesn't seem to exist in a definite state independent of whether it's being observed. This has led to much philosophical debate about the role of consciousness in shaping reality. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the power of intention, focused awareness, and the idea that our consciousness plays a role in creating our reality. Practices like prayer, visualization, or mindful intention setting are believed to influence outcomes. In shamanism, focused intent is often used in healing rituals or when journeying to find information. Is there a connection between the quantum observer effect and the subjective experience of consciousness influencing reality? While we are far from proving that human consciousness directly collapses quantum wave functions on a macroscopic scale, the parallel between a universe where observation matters and spiritual traditions where intention is powerful is a compelling point of contemplation. Quantum tunneling, where a particle passes through a barrier it classically shouldn't be able to, also offers an interesting metaphor. Spiritual awakening often involves sudden breakthroughs in understanding, rapid shedding of old patterns, or the ability to access insights or abilities that felt previously blocked. Psychologically, we talk about breaking through mental or emotional barriers. Could there be a quantum biological component to this, where neural processes or information transfer in the brain utilize quantum tunneling to achieve rapid shifts or access seemingly inaccessible states? Some speculative theories about consciousness and information processing in the brain do touch upon these ideas. Now let's look at the contrast: Schrödinger versus shamanism. Erwin Schrödinger was a brilliant theoretical physicist, working with equations, thought experiments, and rigorous logic to describe the fundamental nature of reality. His world was one of probabilities described by wave functions, collapse upon measurement, and paradoxical cats. It was intellectual, analytical, and aimed at an objective understanding of the universe. A shaman, on the other hand, is a practitioner who navigates altered states of consciousness to interact with perceived non-ordinary reality for healing, guidance, or knowledge. Their tools are not equations and particle accelerators, but drums, chanting, plants, ritual, and the capacity to enter trance states. Their understanding comes not just from analysis, but from direct, subjective experience. They don't just describe reality, they immerse themselves in it, interacting with symbolic landscapes and entities that exist outside the realm of the everyday senses. The shaman's world is one of spirit journeys, soul retrieval, energetic healing, and communication with unseen forces. It is deeply experiential, often symbolic, and rooted in a worldview where everything is alive and interconnected. At first glance, it seems worlds away from the abstract mathematics of quantum mechanics. Yet, both the quantum physicist grappling with the bizarre nature of reality at its smallest scale and the shaman navigating the equally bizarre landscape of non-ordinary consciousness are encountering aspects of existence that defy classical, materialist explanations. The quantum world reveals a physical reality that behaves in ways previously relegated to metaphysics or mysticism. Instantaneous connections, inherent unpredictability, and the importance of the observer. Spiritual awakening and shamanic practices describe a subjective reality that involves interconnectedness, altered perceptions of time and space, and experiences that suggest consciousness is not merely confined within the skull. Could it be that spiritual traditions, particularly those like shamanism that emphasize altered states and direct experience of non-ordinary reality, are ancient empirical systems for exploring aspects of reality that quantum physics is now beginning to describe theoretically? Are these practices a form of protoscience, not using instruments to measure external phenomena, but using disciplined techniques to alter consciousness and directly perceive the underlying interconnected, probabilistic, and observer-influenced nature of reality that quantum physics points to? It's vital to approach these parallels with caution. While the resonance is striking, drawing simple lines between complex quantum concepts and profound subjective experiences risks falling into quantum woo, using scientific terms without rigorous justification to lend credibility to unsubstantiated claims. We are not saying that entanglement is the feeling of oneness, or that the observer effect proves consciousness simply creates reality. The brain is a warm, wet environment, and maintaining delicate quantum states long enough to influence macroscopic consciousness is a major scientific hurdle for many theories. However, the striking resonance between some of the most counterintuitive findings of modern physics and some of the most profound experiences of human consciousness and spirituality is too compelling to ignore. It suggests that both paths of inquiry, the scientific and the spiritual, might, from vastly different starting points and using vastly different methods, be pointing towards aspects of reality that lie beyond the grasp of classical materialism. Perhaps the journey of spiritual awakening, the shedding of the fixed ego self, and the expansion into a sense of interconnectedness is akin to a personal wave function collapsing into a broader, less localized state. Perhaps the shaman's ability to navigate non-ordinary reality involves tapping into layers of potentiality and connection that are always present at the quantum level, but are filtered out by our everyday classical consciousness. Ultimately, the juxtaposition of Schrödinger's equations and shamanic journeys invites us to consider a more integrated view of existence. One where the inner world of consciousness and the outer world of physics are not separate realms, but different facets of a single, mysterious, fundamentally interconnected reality. It encourages us to remain curious, open-minded, and to explore the edges of both science and spirituality, seeking understanding wherever it may be found, whether in the abstract beauty of a quantum equation or the profound silence of an awakened mind. The journey into the quantum physics of spiritual awakening is just beginning.